This is still section 2.6 on transformations. In the last video, we talked about vertical and horizontal translations or shifts. And this time we're going to talk about horizontal and vertical stretches and shrinks. So our equation that we talked about last time is f of x equals a times the absolute value of b times x minus c plus d. And we're going to focus on the a value here. So the a value tells you if there's a vertical stretch or a shrink. If a is greater than 1, then we say there's a vertical stretch by a factor of that number. If a is between 0 and 1, we say there's a vertical shrink by a factor of that number. And so here's a little example off to the side that says f of x equals 3 times the absolute value of x. So this is a vertical stretch by a factor of 3. I make my xy chart, and then since that 3 is on the outside, it's the a value, all your y's get multiplied by 3. So I have these points on the outside of my chart that I plot, -2, 6, -1, 3, 0, 0, 1, 3, and 2, 6, to make my absolute value graph looks like that. The b value tells you if there's a horizontal stretch or shrink. And b, I think we mentioned it before, is always the opposite of what your brain would want to think. So if b is greater than 1, there's a horizontal shrink by a factor of 1 over b. And if b is between 0 and 1, there's a horizontal stretch by a factor of 1 over b. So here, you have f of x equals the absolute value of 2x. So I make my xy chart, put in my values, and instead of multiplying by 2, you want to multiply by 1/2, because it's that 1 over b value. So all my x's get multiplied by 1/2, and I get these values, and so I can plot them. And when I go to write the transformation out in words, I say there's a horizontal shrink by a factor of 1/2. So I have -1, 2, -1/2, 1, 0, 0, 1/2, 1, and 1, 2 to make my absolute value graph look like that. And then we have two examples putting them all together. So the first one says graph y equals negative times the absolute value of 1/2 x minus 3. So I start in the middle here with my x and y columns, and moving from left to right, the first thing I want to do is multiply all my y values by -1. So I'm taking negative times the y values to get these. And then I have this 1/2 x. And because it's 1/2 x and it's on the inside, you're going to multiply all your x values by 2. So taking my x values, multiplying them by 2, I get this. And then my -3, again, is on the outside, so it goes on the y side of the column. And I'm taking these y values, you're working from the column directly next to it, and I'm subtracting 3. So I end up plotting the points -4, -5, -2, 4, 0, -3, 2, -4, and 4, -5. And this is what my graph looks like. Using what you've already know, you can tell me, hopefully, that the vertex is 0, -3. Remember that y equals the absolute value of x minus h plus k. You don't have that minus h in here, so the vertex is 0, and then this -3 is your y value for your vertex. Writing this transformation out in words, you have a reflection over the x-axis, a horizontal stretch by a factor of 2, and a vertical shift down 3 units. Our second example says y equals 2 times the absolute value of x minus 1 minus 4. So I started here with x and y, and I multiply all my y's by 2. So that's where I get 4, 2, 0, 2, 4. And I added 1 to all the x's. This column is left blank because there's not a horizontal stretch or shrink this time. That would go in this column, but there's no number right in front of my x there. So I leave it blank and I use my x column to add 1 to. And that's how I got those values. And then -4, we're using the column right to the left of it and subtracting 4. So 4 minus 4 is 0, 2 minus 4 is -2, and that's how you get those values. So now you have 5 points to plot. -1, 0, 0, -2, 1, -4, 2, -2, and 3, 0. And this is what your absolute value graph looks like. And using your equation or your chart or your graph, the vertex is 1, -4. And writing transformations out in words, you have a vertical stretch by a factor of 2, a horizontal shift right 1 unit, and a vertical shift down 4 units.